Stand rolling.
Going Postal, take one. I regret nothing.
And you can just throw it on the side.
There we go.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, crew. Really, really appreciate it. All right, Jake, so just to start, what is your name and what do you do?
My name is Jake the Voice Parr. I am a community radio DJ, voice actor, and freelance writer.
Amazing. That was fantastic. Let's do one more for safety.
Okay.
What is your name and what do you do?
My name is Jake the Voice Parr. I'm a community radio DJ, writer, freelance writer, and also voice actor.
Awesome. So can you tell us about how you got into radio and about your career?
Sure. So how I got into radio was, it was during my second year of university here in the University of Lincoln. And for a fair bit of a while, I had quite a few people coming up to me and complimenting my voice, and they'd say something like, man, you really should try and get on radio. You know, try radio, Jake, you know. And I wasn't even a fan of radio. I never really showed any interest, so anytime someone would compliment me, I would just be like, okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. So, eventually, though, a friend of mine told me about a community radio station here in the university called Siren Radio, formerly Siren FM, and he basically just kind of nudged my shoulder and said, give it a try. So I signed up to it, and eventually later down the line they gave me the role. They gave me my own slot where I decided to create a radio show all about video games. So combination of talking about video games old and new, talking about things like sharing bad voice acting in video game snippets, and also playing lots of like video game soundtracks, heavy metal, the kind of stuff that's basically it was a very anti-radio show. It was pretty much anything that other community or basic commercial mainstream radio shows, whatever they tried to do, I would try to do the opposite and just do things that I enjoyed, and that resulted in people kind of flocking towards it. It became a bit of a fairly kind of popular show on the station. It's considered to be actually one of the most popular shows on Siren Radio as a result.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you letting us know your background. It's really interesting. So, it sounds like that. I assume that you're a gamer yourself. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the games that you talked about, some of the games you played growing up. Just let's make that connection between radio and video games.
Yeah, I've been a video gamer for a very long period of my life, really. I would always start off when I was younger. I would always start off like watching my dad or my brothers play things like the Super Nintendo and the Sega Mega Drive, otherwise known as the Sega Genesis in the United States. Looking at games that really caught my attention, things like watch Mortal Kombat and then Super Mario 64, and just kind of being really pulled in by these things. I never played them myself because I was very anxious. I was like very worried about kind of giving it a try, failing and things like that. I think eventually down the line, though, I think the first game that I genuinely picked up and tried to play was Doom on the PlayStation, and it's to this day my favourite game to this day. It kind of cemented my interests, especially in first-person shooters. That was like, you could say that was like my gateway into the world of first-person shooters, and up to this point I've been playing like so many games. To the point where it's like, especially old school stuff, especially like kind of the retro stuff that has started to kind of lean towards show interest in. Eventually down the line, the more games I played and the more things I kind of branched out towards and joined more communities later on as a result. And really, it kind of helped. Like gaming really has tied into a lot of my work, like voice acting in video games. The radio show, of course, about video games. The writing that I've done, I'm the co-creator of a magazine called E1M1 Magazine, which is all about like retro first-person shooters and things like that, and I've written for loads of websites and done stuff on YouTube as well about video games. It's all pretty much just tied into that. Like most, if not all, of my kind of career has been tied to my interests in video games, which basically kind of just sparked when I was a toddler.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. It always warms my heart when someone says Doom is my favorite video game, because Doom 2 is like my all-time favorite video game.
Good choice.
Nice. So obviously you have quite an interest in first-person shooters, video games. You have a great voice, so obviously there's like this marriage between radio and video games. Tell us about how you ran across Postal for the first time.
I ran across Postal. It's quite a funny story, actually. It was during my time at university, and I was outside the library chatting to a friend of mine, and I was talking to video games about him. I believe that was the point when I had the radio show as well. And he spoke to me and said, "You ever heard of a game called Postal? Like Postal 2? And I was like, "Never heard of it. What's it about?" And the premise alone was enough to kind of get my interest going. He basically said, it's a first-person shooter, kind of free roam, etc., but the whole kind of objective of the game is to make you want to go postal and do the violent route. He says that you don't have to, but there's so many things that are making you want to do that. So, for example, loads of bystanders being really rude, or there's long lines, or anytime you try and do something like go to church or go to the library or something like that, like enemies swarm in and they're trying to basically kill you. And he told me about some of the wacky kind of features and other kind of things that you can do in the game. And just the amount of freedom in it as well, and the bizarre sense of humour included. And I remember just chatting with him about it, just laughing on the spot, and I thought, this sounds great. Eventually down the line, I think it was maybe a year later or so, because I kind of forgot about it after been a while, but when I found out about it, it was in a flatmate's room on his PC, and he had Postal 2, and I was like, oh, hey, can I give this a try? I wasn't a PC gamer around this time, I was more towards the console stuff. So he allowed me to play it, and I was hooked from the first try. Just being able to, again, just free roaming around the town of Paradise, just causing havoc, and it was very much kind of like an experimental playthrough to kind of get a taste of the kind of nutty, surreal sense of humour. I mean, I love surrealist kind of sense of humour myself, and very bizarre, kind of tongue-in-cheek, cheeky jokes and things like that. So it was just really a match made in heaven for me when I was playing this kind of stuff. And I had an absolute blast, and just hearing the Postal dude's voice by Rick Hunter especially. It was just great to hear those lines being delivered by him, and it even got me just like sometimes walking around the house kind of quipping those lines to myself, making myself chuckle. So that was definitely like my foot into the Postal series. It was definitely by Postal 2. Later down the line, I ended up, I checked out some of the later games. Like I researched into the first Postal game before I actually played that one, and was like really blown away by how they were trying to, really push the boundaries with the content, and played the remake, Postal Redux, and I got completely hooked to that, and had a ball with that. And that, of course, led to me deciding, you know what, I think I would like to interview these guys for my radio show.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. My follow-up question was going to talk about how you, your interview with Rick Hunter and all that, how that went, and how you got that, because, obviously Rick's a very private guy, so it's really cool that you were able to do that. But before I get into it, just from one voice actor to another, can you tell me more about Rick Hunter's performance in Postal? What do you like about it? What are your favorite quotes? I just want to hear more about the creative. It seems like a lot of people, especially fans of Postal, are just so hooked to his voice. So it would be interesting to hear kind of the reasoning why, from a professional like you, people might enjoy it.
I think some of the reasons why people enjoyed Rick Hunter's performance as the Postal dude, I think it's, for one thing, like the most distinctive feature about it is that it's very smooth, it's very deep, very kind of like a buttery kind of sound to it. It's very pleasant to listen to. And even the delivery, it's not anything grandiose or in your face or anything like that. I mean, that's basically his natural voice, which surprises a lot of people. It's really just him kind of reading off these strange, bizarre kind of quips. And, it's kind of like a bit of a sarcastic slant to it, like, hey, you, kind of. being a little bit in your face, like slight kind of, you can just imagine maybe slight smirk or a slight grin to these kind of these lines of delivery, and it's like it's some of the things he says as well is just exceptionally bizarre at times. Like, I mean, his golden line, of course, being, I regret nothing. That alone is just, it's a short, sweet, quotable kind of catchphrase that's stuck with the game, and it's unsurprising to see that so many people love just saying it. I regret nothing. They even put it on the merchandise as well with the official Postal shirts, etc. As for things like favorite lines and things like that, again, it's always things like just some of the bizarre kind of one-liners that he would drop just in between, like things like combat, like again, another one of his quirkier lines would just be like, you go around, you like blow someone's head off with a shotgun, and then the postal dude would just quip something like butt sauce, and you just play through it, you just kind of take a moment to wince and just kind of burst out laughing at it. Even in context, even with the context given, it still sounds completely, utterly wacky and nutty. And again, that's what people like about it. People like that kind of, that wacky, silly sense of humour that comes with it, with this kind of smooth, very, very memorable, kind of deep bass delivery.
Great. Yeah, me personally, I just love hearing sort of the creative feedback and kind of like the little nuances of why people enjoy things. So that was a fantastic answer. I appreciate it. Yeah, with that being said, you have a great interview with Rick Hunter. He's a very private person, and obviously that led to this more or less. But let's take us back to that moment you decided to interview Rick Hunter. How did you obtain it? What was that like speaking with him? I mean, you're a huge fan of the game, and all of a sudden you have this dude on your radio show. What was that like?
Well, it all came to happen. Getting Rick Hunter on board for a radio interview, that was. let me put it this way. I'm pretty much the first and only person to be able to get Rick Hunter on for an interview, and I am incredibly grateful for that. I owe it all to the gang at Running with Scissors, because when I interviewed the creator of Running with Scissors, Vince Desi, and also the business guy Mike J. So basically, the kind of two faces of the company. So when I got those guys on board, and I thought, what, it would be interesting to kind of get a bit of a history lesson from these guys, get their input about the entries in the series, etc. So when I got them on board, chatted them for about an hour or so, and left it pretty much all the way through mostly uncut. Like, their answers were completely uncut. So I think they kind of trusted me as a result. They kind of trusted me with a potential interview with Rick Hunter. So I asked, I would love to get Rick on board. Is he up for an interview? Do you have his contact email? So since they trusted me, they said, yeah, let me pass on the message, said Mike. And surprisingly enough, Rick said yes. I didn't know much about Rick at all. I didn't know how private of a guy he was. So I think later down the line I realised how much of a rare opportunity this was to be able to speak with Rick. So when I got him on board, when I got him in the Skype call, we got chatting, and naturally delivered some of the questions with him. What I kind of really appreciated was the fact that Rick was a very humble guy, and he still is. He's a very humble kind of private guy, and as grateful as he is for his for some of the feedback and for the kind things that the fans have said about his performance, he's really not a fan of his performance. He really doesn't think he's that great of a voice role in the Postal series. I mean, he's done voice roles for adverts and radios, things like that. That's kind of like his bread and butter way of keeping financially afloat. But otherwise, though, he just wasn't really a fan of it. And I'd say, did you have any favourite lines? Did you enjoy the role? And he would just say, nah, not really. And he's probably the only person I've interviewed who genuinely didn't think too much of his role. That's not necessarily a bad thing. it's just that, he was basically just really being very open and honest and down to earth about it, and that's something I just really appreciated. I appreciated these kind of answers and him opening up as well, for the first time, about why he never did the role for Postal 3, which, got picked up by Corey Cruz, a friend of his. Because there was a lot of misinformation online, people saying, oh, Rick saw the game and said, oh, it's terrible, I'm not going to voice in this, but that's completely untrue. That nothing of the sort ever happened. So to be able to, again, to dig into these kind of very obscure facts about him and dig out some more information about the guy, very, like I say, very humble, very down-to-earth answers, and to get him on my radio show, The Cyberden, it was an absolute honour. And as a result, I think that interview especially, that helped get my name out towards the Postal community. A lot of the fans of the Postal series, a lot of people have been flocking to that interview ever since, and a lot of people know my name and know for my interviews because of that. Some people actually come up and say that was the first interview they ever saw of me, and some even go up and say, "Hey, Jake, you're going to be voicing in Postal games someday." It's like, well, maybe they know my number. And some people say, "Hey, can I get in touch with Rick?" It's like, I'm afraid not. I gotta keep these things tight. So, like I say, it was kind of really surprising, and again, really humbling as well to see that this once in a lifetime interview with the guy was pretty much kind of like my springboard as well to kind of get more well known within the Postal community especially. And again, really grateful, really honoured for it, and I thank Rick, I thank all the fans, and I especially thank the guys at Running with Scissors for letting me get this sorted out for the Cyberden.
Awesome. Nice. Well, with that being said, I know you mentioned Corey in there. It would be cool if you can kind of compare and contrast Corey's performance with Rick's performance. Have you interviewed Corey before, by the way?
Yeah, I interviewed Corey shortly sometime after the interview with Rick Hunter, because I thought that interviewing Rick, that was great, of course. But I thought, well, what about Corey? No one's ever actually chatted to the guy. So it would be interesting to get his input on the third entry, which is, of course, infamous in the Postal community. The creators hate it. They kind of disavow it. They kind of pretend it doesn't exist. And I just thought, what? A chappie who basically voiced in what's considered to be one of the worst games ever due to various reasons out of the developer's control and out of Running with Scissors control. I just thought, what, this would be an interesting spin. So I naturally I asked through Running with Scissors to get in contact with Corey for me, and he was very happy to chat a bit about it. And we got chatting, of course, and we had a very good laugh with me and him about his role. I was very much drawn to his performance because I checked out the cutscenes first, just to get a bit of an idea about his performance, and I was just actually quite taken aback by it because Corey, he described his voice as very peculiar, and I thought, well, I can relate. With his voice, it's not so much like smooth and buttery and kind of mellow. It's a bit more radio personality like. It's a bit more, a little bit more outgoing, a little bit more energetic, but it still has that kind of, southern kind of, the American kind of twang to it, kind of from the Arizona, Texas area. I think that's something that a lot of people really enjoyed. His performance, again, it just seemed very natural. The delivery of a lot of the lines was just very quirky. You could tell he was enjoying it. You could tell that he was really enjoying the bizarreness of these very strange lines that appeared in Postal 3. Again, it may be considered to be a terrible game, but a lot of people say Corey's performance is probably the only good thing about it, and I totally agree full-heartedly.
Awesome. Yeah, it's like I said, it's really interesting to hear from someone on an outside perspective, just kind of getting a feel of of Corey's performance versus Rick's performance. And you're right. I think that is the only great thing about Postal 3 is his performance. Yeah, I mean that covers a lot of the bulk of what I wanted to essentially speak to you about, and you just nailed every single follow up with great answers, great performance. It's almost like you speak for a living or something. But what I wanted to ask, I don't know if this is something that we want to be meta about in the documentary, but I did want to just get it on camera while we're here. Wanted you to just kind of talk about your interactions with us, and to just tell us in your own words the story about us getting connected to you, which got us in touch with Rick, which I am absolutely grateful for, really appreciative. We actually knocked out that interview a week and a half ago, went awesome. So thank you again. But yeah, if you just want to tell us that story, that'd be great, because that's kind of what fans have been asking for this documentary, is making sure that Rick Hunter was featured.
Sure. In regards to getting on board with this documentary, my memory's a little foggy about who messaged who first. I think it might have been me messaging them first, because I saw this Going Postal documentary kind of like just appearing on my Twitter feed, and I thought, okay, this looks interesting. And I personally, I just like getting on board with certain projects because I hate being bored, simply put. I just hate being bored, and if there's something that really interests me, especially in the world of video games or voice work or anything like that, then I would like to kind of hopefully try and put my foot forwards towards it and give it a crack. So I pretty much just messaged and said, hey, if you ever need anything, I'd love to help out if there's anything you guys need. So just kind of generally throw my hat into there. And of course, the documentary guys were very, very, very approachable, very generous about these things. The crew pretty much asked me about getting on board Rick Hunter, and I thought, well, it's a little bit tough, to be honest. I don't know if I can get it done. Kind of explaining the problems that we've been having with getting him on board, and it's like, yeah, I kind of know some of the reasons why, some not all, but nevertheless, I pretty much acted as the middleman for getting Rick Hunter on for the Going Postal documentary, and he was a bit hesitant at first. He was like, oh, I don't know. It's like, he's a private guy, as we all know. Naturally, a little bit of back and forth with talking with the documentary creators and Rick. Eventually down the line, though, we kind of made a bit of a breakthrough, because Rick decided, you know what, Jake, I'll do it for you. I respect you. I think you do great work. As long as this is something that you can get something out of, I'll do it. So, very happy about that. And, got on board with the documentary crew to kind of chat about things, about, not only getting Rick on board, but they also expressed interest in getting me on board as well. I did not expect that in the slightest. I really didn't expect to be taken on board as well for an interview. So I was very much happy to do it. I thought this was going to be a very exciting kind of opportunity to go on camera and just chat a little bit about some of the stuff I've done, and also maybe shed a little bit of light and behind the scenes of like the Cyberden and my Postal interviews and my interest in the series, etc. So I was more than happy to kind of jump on board, and more than happy to kind of just keep trying to help out in any way I can, because it just seemed like an interesting project to me, and I just like contributing to these kinds of things.
Awesome. Much appreciated. Something that I actually want to hear from you, I know you kind of touched upon it, but I kind of want to like overlay this shadow of kind of secrecy over Rick, to kind of just build it up a little bit. So if you can kind of just like express to us a little bit about how private of a person he is, and I want you to emphasize again how you did the one and only interview. I just kind of want to encapsulate that all into one question with a follow-up answer. So can you tell us about how private Rick is?
Rick is a very private guy. Some people will ask to what extent, and I say, well, let me put it this way, you won't find him on social media. Like, you will have quite literally 0% chance of finding him. And I don't think anyone has really found him to this day. He really just wants to kind of stay out of the limelight and just kind of, he wants to get on with his work, and he doesn't want to, I suppose to not get too like caught up with like too many fan emails or all these requests about getting him on board. He has a YouTube channel where he mostly just uploads things like some like, for example, news pieces and things like that. That's probably the only kind of chance you'll spot him, but otherwise, there's no kind of like contact email, things like that. With me getting on board with Rick was simply a matter of talking to the crew at Running with Scissors after I basically secured their trust with an interview. And again, I did not intend originally on chatting with Rick Hunter because I didn't even think of it. I never kind of came up with that idea. I just thought, let's chat with the Postal developers, and then just afterwards I thought, you know what, let's get him on board. But how do I do it? So I spoke to Mike J about it, and he hooked me up with them. Again, I think it was just like a matter of trust. And again with Rick as well. I'm still technically in contact with him. It's not like people think, oh, Jake, you're chatting with him on a regular basis. You're like buddy friends. It's like it's not necessarily the case. I mean, I have his email, and if I'm lucky, I'll get a response from him. But the guy is very busy. He's like flooded with emails with work roles, voice roles for radios and adverts and things like that. So it's not necessarily me and him being like good old voice acting friends or things like that. But the guy has specified he likes me and he really respects my work, and he really kind of trusted me with that interview and like his private life. He says that he would rather kind of stay out of the limelight and just kind of do his own thing, because to him the Postal voice roles, things like that, it was kind of just another gig, even if he was very grateful about it. So he doesn't want anyone to kind of get the idea that he's like easily approachable. I think he's kind of like he likes his peace and quiet. He might be I think he's a little bit shy about the idea of like global fame. I think the idea of global fame would probably spook out some people. So, but nevertheless, I can respect that. I can respect the fact that he just wants to kind of like, live his life, do his work, and just kind of go things at his own pace.
Fantastic. Looks like Tad's joining us right at the end here. What's up, Tad? Can you hear us? Maybe not. Well, Jake, we're right coming towards the end. I got a couple more questions.
Okay.
Are we doing good on cam and sound? You guys doing okay over there?
You're doing great, thanks.
All good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So I was looking at your body of work, man. You got some cool stuff here. In particular, I think it's really awesome. So you did voice for Command and Conquer, correct?
I did some voice roles for some of the mods, some of the modding scenes from Command and Conquer. One of the well, I mean, I've been a big fan of Command and Conquer myself. I interviewed like the composer. I interviewed Kane, the big villain from the Tiberium universe of Command and Conquer. So very much when I was kind of like growing up, and when I was kind of starting off with my voice stuff with just amateur voice acting and kind of climbing up. Eventually down the line, I just kind of liked the idea of being able to get on board with any kind of real-time strategy kind of stuff, and especially with the Command and Conquer modding community, which I was very much expressed interest in. So sent off a few auditions to the Mental Omega, and I think it was the Twisted Insurrection. So one which is like in the Red Alert universe with the Allies and the Soviets, and I got on board with that with a few voice roles for some of the units, and also dubbing over Yuri, the kind of the Russian psychic. So that was kind of used as a bit of a mod of the year trailer, as if basically to say vote for me. As for Twisted Insurrection, again that's like a spin-off on Tiberium's Sun, set in like the post-apocalyptic future between the Global Defense Initiative and the kind of evil Brotherhood of Nod. With that, what happened with that was, again, I voiced a few characters here and there, a few units, and I also voiced basically an announcer, or EVA as it's called, for like a completely original faction called Globotech. So again, it was a matter of just sending off my demo reels, getting in contact with one of the people and sharing some stuff, and they just kind of liked the idea of me kind of doing announcer work, just kind of like dropping my voice down to make a very serious, very kind of flat tone.